You didn't do much today. No heavy work, no long hours, nothing that should explain the way you feel, and yet you're tired. Not physically exhausted, not sleepy, but mentally drained in a way that's hard to describe. It feels like your energy was used up without anything obvious happening. This kind of tiredness is confusing because it doesn't match effort. It doesn't follow the old rules we learned growing up, where work led to fatigue and rest led to recovery. So when it shows up, people assume it must be a personal problem. Laziness, weak discipline, a lack of motivation. But this kind of exhaustion isn't a moral failure. It's not something you fix by trying harder. It has a cause, and that cause is not what most people think it is. This feeling has become so common that many people now think it's normal. Waking up already low on energy, feeling mentally heavy before the day has even started, needing breaks without having done anything demanding. When this happens repeatedly, it slowly reshapes how you see yourself. You start to identify as someone who lacks drive, someone who struggles to stay consistent, someone who can't keep up. But the truth is, this exhaustion isn't coming from a lack of effort. It's coming from a type of load that doesn't register as work, yet consumes energy all the same. And because it's invisible, people internalize it instead of questioning the environment that creates it. To understand what's happening, you have to separate physical fatigue from mental exhaustion. Physical fatigue is easy to recognize. You use your body, you feel tired, you rest, and energy gradually returns. Mental exhaustion doesn't work like that. You can sit still all day and still feel depleted. You can avoid effort and still feel drained. That's because the mind doesn't recover from inactivity. It recovers from reduced demand. And demand doesn't only come from tasks. It comes from attention being pulled, processed, and redirected over and over again throughout the day. Even when you think you're doing nothing, your mind is rarely idle. It's filtering information, reacting to small signals, switching context, and making tiny decisions constantly. Messages arrive. Content plays in the background. Notifications light up your screen. None of this feels intense. None of it feels like work. But it requires cognitive energy. The brain doesn't distinguish between meaningful effort and low-level stimulation. It only knows that attention is being used. And when attention is used continuously, energy is slowly drained without you noticing it happening. This is why this kind of tiredness feels so unfair. There's no moment where you can point and say, "That's what exhausted me." No single task, no clear overload. Just a slow accumulation that leaves you empty by the end of the day. It's like a leak instead of a crash. Because it happens quietly, people don't respect it. They push through it. They add more stimulation to escape the discomfort, and that only deepens the exhaustion because it keeps the system active when it actually needs to settle. This also explains why rest doesn't feel restorative anymore. You stop moving, but your mind never truly stops. Screens replace silence. Entertainment replaces recovery. Scrolling replaces closure. The body may be resting, but the attention system stays engaged. It keeps reacting, filtering, and switching. So you never actually exit the mental workload. And because the mind never powers down, exhaustion continues to build even during moments that look like rest from the outside. Over time, this creates a dangerous misunderstanding. People think they need more motivation, more discipline, more structure. But effort is not the missing piece. Adding effort on top of mental overload is like pressing the gas pedal in a car that's already overheating. It doesn't solve the problem. It accelerates it. The issue isn't that you're underperforming. It's that your system is constantly active without resolution. And systems that never resolve eventually burn out, even without intense effort. Here's the reframe that changes everything. You're not tired because you're doing too much. You're tired because nothing ever fully ends. Tasks remain open. Thoughts stay unresolved. Attention never settles long enough to close the loop. Mental energy is restored when stimulation drops low enough for the system to complete what's unfinished. Not through force, not through productivity, through closure. And closure requires a level of quiet that most people no longer experience. Mental recovery is not the same as physical recovery. It doesn't come from lying down or switching tasks. It comes from reducing input to the point where the mind can reorganize itself. When nothing new enters, the brain begins sorting, integrating, and resolving. This is why silence feels uncomfortable at first. When stimulation drops, unfinished thoughts surface. That discomfort isn't danger, it's processing. Avoiding it keeps exhaustion alive. Staying with it allows the system to reset. This is why silence feels so difficult now. Not because it's empty, but because it reveals how overloaded the mind has become. Noise acts like a shield. It prevents unresolved thoughts from appearing, but it also prevents recovery. When silence finally arrives, the mind rushes to fill it, because it hasn't learned how to settle on its own. This doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It means your attention system has adapted to constant input, and adaptation can be reversed. The solution is not doing less, it's processing less. That distinction matters. You don't need to withdraw from life. You need moments where nothing new enters your system. No information, no background content, no passive stimulation. Not as a productivity routine, as a condition for recovery. When input drops, attention stabilizes on its own. The mind doesn't need instructions. It needs space. And when it gets that space, energy starts returning without effort. At first, this shift feels uncomfortable, even boring. Restless thoughts surface. The urge to reach for stimulation becomes strong. This is not failure, it's withdrawal. The system is adjusting to a lower level of input. If you don't escape that discomfort, it passes. And once it does, something changes. Thoughts slow down. Mental tension releases. Clarity starts appearing naturally, not because you forced it, but because the system finally has room to breathe. This changes how you relate to yourself. You stop seeing your tiredness as a character flaw. You stop labeling yourself as unmotivated or weak. Instead, you recognize overload for what it is, a mechanical response to constant demand. That shift alone removes guilt. And when guilt disappears, energy stops being wasted on self-blame. That reclaimed energy doesn't feel dramatic. It feels quiet, stable, and sustainable. Over time, this perspective reshapes how you approach life. You become more selective, not more disciplined. You protect attention instead of forcing output. You allow things to end instead of stacking them endlessly. And as mental noise decreases, effort starts feeling lighter again. Not because tasks changed, but because the system performing them is no longer running at full capacity all the time. If you feel tired even when you don't do much, nothing is wrong with you. You're not broken. You're not lazy. You're mentally overloaded in a world that rarely allows attention to settle. Energy doesn't return through pressure. It returns through resolution. And when the system is finally allowed to power down, clarity and strength come back quietly, without force.